Hello, guys. Welcome to the pilot episode of Riptide with Alex Goff. Now, before we start, I unfortunately have to do the thing. So if you enjoy the video, then please like and subscribe. Mostly because my channel is small, so if you like the video and you don't subscribe, then it's going to be hard for you to find the show again. But now, enough of the pandering. Let's get on to the show. So, first up on the order of business, I want to talk about a little bit about the Lakers. So Luka Doncic is my favorite player. And it's been great to see him kind of get in shape after what was a bit of a disappointing last season. Now, his impact so far has been hard to judge because he's been hurt a little bit, but so far he looks incredible. And the thing I want to talk about with the Lakers is that LeBron has been out so far. So basically, what does that mean for the Lakers? Because right now they've been winning. I think they've only lost 2 games so far, and they're missing LeBron James, and it's just been because Austin Reeves has been awesome. Luka has been awesome when he's played. He's played about half the games. So really this season is looking like how necessary really is LeBron to the Lakers at this point. Because going into this season, I thought that they were going to struggle in kind of the first little bit of the season when he was out because they really needed, funnily enough, his defense, because Luka was able to take the offensive load and he was able to be their best perimeter defender. Now, that's not a great long-term strategy because obviously he's very old, so you don't want a 41-year-old to be your primary perimeter defender if at all possible. But so far what I've seen is that they really don't look like they need him that much. I mean, Austin Reeves looks like he could be the primary scorer on a really good team. DeAndre Ayton actually just last night had a really good game. I think he had 29 points. If you can even get anything like that out of him, not on the volume, just the efficiency and the aggressiveness with Luka playing, then this could be a real contender. Marcus Smart has had a career resurgence. I mean, he looks great again. He looks like a dominant defensive player. And so I'm thinking I don't necessarily think they should trade LeBron because once he gets back, he is still a really good decision maker and a really good defender. So I don't know how long he needs to be a part of their long-term future, if he has much of a long-term future left. Again, he's really old, so you really don't know how much longer he's going to play. Any season could be his last season at this point, although he'll certainly let us know in the offseason when it's going to be his last season. So basically, I just want to get back to skinny Luka. He looks like a much improved defender. He's not getting beaten off the perimeter like he was last season. I mean, he's getting into the passing lane, still getting steals, but he'll never be all NBA on defense, but he looks like he can be a really legitimate defender now. He just has to try. Yes, that's a little bit about the Lakers. Now I want to move over to the Bucks. Bucks, I didn't think they were going to be very good. I didn't think they had enough talent. I thought they were going to have mostly the problems they had last year. Just not enough talent around Giannis. So far, I've been wrong. I've been happily wrong. I like Giannis. He is the MVP of the league so far. Scoring, I think, about 36 points. He's averaging like 14 rebounds a game. And I think it's on about 73% true shooting. I mean, the numbers are just absurd. And I mean, you saw last night, he just had a game winner over the Trailblazers. It was okay, here we go. He's averaging 34 points per game. He had the long mid-range game winner over the Trailblazers. I'll be interested to see if he does a little bit more with the mid-range than he has in previous seasons, because a big knock on him has always been that he doesn't have the ability to go and close out a game, a move to go get a bucket if the other team builds a wall in the paint and you need to get something at the end of the game. So if he's able to develop that mid-range where it's a reliable option late in games, then that would really make this Bucks team interesting. Miles Turner has been excellent. They've just had a lot of players step up who they know their role and they know what they're good at, because this team is playing over the sum of its parts right now. Like, you wouldn't think that you have all these guys playing so well, because I'm just looking at the stats right now. I mean, Giannis is leading them in points, assists, and rebounds per game. But Miles Turner has been a really good rim protector. I mean, 2.3 blocks per game. He's just been good, man. He's done a lot of what he did for the Pacers last season. Not as much of a scoring load, averaging less than 10 points a game so far, and he hasn't been efficient. 39.7. That is reason to be optimistic for the Bucks, because he's not going to stay that bad for the rest of this season. His shot is going to start to fall. I think he proved in last year's playoffs that he's one of the best stretch fives the league has to offer. So once he gets going, the Bucks are going to be a real contender in the East, because obviously we've seen in the playoffs, Giannis has always been a playoff riser. He's not a guy who shies away from the big moments. So they have the most important thing you need to be a contender in the NBA, which is a superstar who can take you to the promised land once it gets to the games that really matter down in the playoffs. So yeah, I think so far he's the MVP, and the Bucks, it's a great story. I've been shocked. I did not expect them to be this good. But yeah, speaking of early dominance, I want to talk about a little bit about Wembanyama and the Spurs. The Spurs, they set their all-time franchise record for most wins to start a season. They won 5 in a row. They actually just lost last night. They lost last night to the Suns, which is not a good team to have your first loss to. But they had a couple of good wins, really good wins. Obviously, season opener, Wembanyama just packed up the Mavericks. And then he's been good basically the rest of the season, except for against Phoenix. Now, he had 9 points against Phoenix, but what's the more important takeaway from that, because he's a young player still. He's really only played, this is only his, he only played half a season last year, so he only has 1.5 seasons experience. When you're a young player, especially one that likes to shoot like he does, there are going to be nights when your shot doesn't fall, and you're going to have rough nights. Now, 9 is rougher than most of the rough nights are going to be, but if you look at those numbers, I think he still had 4 blocks and a steal. I mean, that's just telling me, even on his worst night, when you completely shut him up on offense, he's still the most dominant defensive force in the game by a mile. I mean, that kind of offensive night, that's why it was a little bit premature to maybe say that he's already the best player in the NBA after the first game. Although it did seem like it. I mean, the way he just packed up Anthony Davis, who would be one of the first 3 names you'd call out if you picked somebody to try to slow him down. I mean, he just made him look like a JV player. But obviously that's a few games ago. He hasn't quite looked that dominant since. But he's still been unbelievable on defense. I mean, I think he's averaging like almost 5 stocks a game. Actually, let me look that up real quick. But the second place guy for blocks, I think, is Miles Turner at 2.8. Let's see here. But yeah, I mean, I think part of this rise for Wembanyama has just been unbelievable. He looks, I mean, every time I see him, I just think I can't understand how this guy keeps getting better. Yeah, so here we go. So Wembanyama, over the last 10 games, so this season, has averaged 4.7 blocks a game. 4.7. Second place is 2.8. That is unbelievable. So the thing for Wembanyama is that this season has kind of shown why he has a great chance to be one of the greatest players of all time. Because last season he had the blood clot issue, and hopefully that won't be an issue throughout his career. But he had the blood clot issue, and he wasn't able to play for essentially the second half of the season. But it looks like he really took all that time and decided that he was going to just put it all into work. He went up to and lived like a monk for, I think it was a month or over a month, that he was just living with monks, trying to get his mental game as strong as possible, and it seems like that's worked. I mean, this guy, he just does stuff that nobody else does. You can see how seriously he takes his health with all the stretching, all the yoga he does. That's something, I mean, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, he always talked about how much stretching helped him extend his career. I mean, you can see Wemby, he gets in and does the things nobody else wants to do, which is wildly impressive considering he's only 21. It's really kind of LeBron-esque because he was another guy who had all the physical talents in the world at a young age, and he was really good about trying to find ways to build his longevity, taking care of his body, eating right, not going out and partying all the time because he knew he wanted to be one of the greatest of all time and he knew he would need a long time to do it. So just based on what I'm seeing, Wembanyama, he has a chance to not only, like, I think he's going to be, at this point, it would be a disappointment if he does not finish his career as the greatest defensive player of all time. And, I mean, I'm a huge fan of Hakeem Olajuwon. Whenever I watched some of him, people weren't afraid of attacking him at the basket like they are of Wembanyama. I mean, guys will have layups or shot attempts at the rim that they would take against anybody else that they will pass out of if Wembanyama is anywhere in the vicinity. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And those are shots that don't show up on the stat sheet. And then back to his mentality, he'll go up and challenge anything. I mean, by the end of his career, there's going to be a ton of guys who have posters on Wemby because he goes up and contests everything. You'll see a lot of guys, sometimes they'll just kind of get out of the way if they know they're not going to be able to block it. And he goes up to try to contest everything. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of posters, but you know what? Until she stops averaging 5 blocks a game, I don't think anyone's going to care. So yeah, I mean, what he's doing at his height is just going to revolutionize, I think, how tall, skinny players are viewed, because everybody kind of thought that he was going to have injury problems. So far, he hasn't had injury problems outside of the blood clots, which are more of a sickness. And he's the first guy I've ever seen who is over 7 foot, like clearly taller than 7 feet, and has real dribbling moves on the 3-point line. Like, the closest guy to that is Kevin Durant. But he's, depending on the day, depending how they measure him, he swings from 6'11" to 7 foot to 7'1". It's hard to tell. But Wembanyama, you look at him on the court and you're thinking he's not shorter than 7'5", and he has just insane footwork and dribbling moves. I mean, Embiid has a little bit of it, but he's more in the mid post. That's more where he likes to go. Wembanyama will go, and he really moves like a guard on the perimeter, and it's insane. But yeah, so coming from that, I want to go ahead and talk a little bit about the reigning champs, Oklahoma City. They have been dominant so far coming out off of the championship. I think everybody more or less expected them to be great coming off the championship. Let me look up. They're still undefeated. Yeah, 7-0 this season. I mean, they have, like I said, they've been dominant. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has been great. He's averaging 33.6 points per game. He's been unbelievable. It feels like night in, night out, your team is doing well if you keep him under 35. Even though so far in the season, he's been terrible from three. He's shooting 27% from three. He's not going to shoot that for the whole season. And right now, the field goal percentage is pretty sustainable. He's shooting about 52.6. By the end of the career, you'd expect, or by the end of the season, you'd expect that to be down more by 50 or 51. But you don't see that falling very much, especially as the 3-point shot is going to start falling. He's better than a 27% 3-point shooter, a lot better. But even with that, he's just getting to where he wants, and he's just been unbelievable. I know a lot of people hate the free throws, how he draws fouls. Look, that is a part of the game. It's a skill. He does get a friendly whistle. That's undeniable. There are calls he gets that probably not very many other players in the league would get. But what he does is a skill. The ability to get guys off their feet, lean into them, go up for the shot, and take the shot. Is it frustrating to watch sometimes? Yeah, it's frustrating because sometimes you wish he would just go to try to make the shot instead of drawing the foul. But I mean, it works. He is submitting his application as the best scorer in the league, because right now, I mean, the guys you have to look at for that title, you want to put Giannis in there just because of the volume is so insane of what he's doing, but over the course of a season, you don't really think of him as much as just a pure scorer, because he doesn't really have moves. If you found somebody who could physically keep up with him, or if you have a team that can run a double bigs lineup, you might be able to slow him down. With Shai, there's just nobody who can really hold him in check. He's got so many moves. There's so much he can do. He can score on all three levels. You can trust him to go get you a bucket at the end of the game if you need to get up. And then he's a really good defender. A couple years ago, I mean, he led the league in steals. He's averaging about a steal per game this season. But he's an excellent defender. He's the best. It's between him and Luka, in my opinion, for the best pure scorers in the league. Now, is he the best complete offensive player? No. Because most complete offensive player, I at this point would probably pick Luka, just because Jokic has seemed a little bit off to start the season. But it's either Luka or Jokic, just because they can be a complete offensive hub for the team. But just as a scorer, you need somebody to go and get you a bucket. It's Shai and Luka on a tier of their own, and then it's everybody else. And then, I mean, he's bringing back the mid-range. He's like Shai. He's just like if DeMar DeRozan was better. He's if DeMar DeRozan was like an all-time great player, which I think is where Shai is going to find himself at the end of the year, or at the end of his career. By the time Shai's career is over, don't be surprised if you're talking about him as a consensus top 30 player of all time. Because right now he's on track for that. He's already got a championship, already got an MVP. He might finish his career with 3 scoring titles. I mean, you got to look at that. Is that guy better than Allen Iverson? That's a really tough argument. It's not one a lot of people want to have because of Allen Iverson's cultural significance, but you're going to look at Shai at the end of his career and really have to consider, is this guy better than Allen Iverson, better than Charles Barkley? And that's going to be a really interesting conversation. And then just as the team, Oklahoma City, they've shown so far they can win every different way. Their first game was a double overtime thriller against the Rockets, who basically everyone thinks is going to be an excellent team this year. They've won close games. They've won overtime. They've beaten good teams. They've crushed the bad teams. I mean, they've done everything you would want them to do with their schedule so far. They've won kind of low-scoring games. They're still showing that their defense is excellent. They're a dominant team. And I think you're going to look back on this Oklahoma City team and really have to ask, is this one of the best teams of our era? I mean, they're putting together a strong argument that they're one of the best teams of the 2020s. They're honestly reminding me a little bit of how the Celtics looked at the start of last year, when it felt almost inevitable. Oh, this team is just going to go back to back, and it's not even going to be hard. Except the only teams that you would look at and think, well, maybe they could pose a problem, were teams like last year's Thunder. Well, so far you've got the Rockets, but the Thunder have already shown that when it comes down to the wire, they're just going to be the better team. And if they need to get a last shot, they're going to be able to get the last shot and then keep you from getting yours off. So far, I mean, I think the Thunder have to be the favorites for the championship. And they've just been incredible to start off the season. All right, so now I want to talk about some NFL topics. Okay, so first up, I want to talk about the modern dynasty in the NFL, the Kansas City Chiefs. Okay, After the Bills game, it's a tough loss. They lose that game every year, but this year really felt like they might really try to win that one because of the record and some of the early season struggles. Now, after the trade deadline, there were a few concerns about the Chiefs. They did not make any trades at all. Frankly, I don't really understand it. I don't understand a lot that goes on with their front office because somehow it usually seems to work out, but it doesn't feel like they ever make the best decision. At some point you gotta think like, it feels like Brett Veach is getting carried by Patrick Mahomes sometimes, because you look at what he's doing here, and you saw some of the backup offensive linemen were not good against Buffalo. Buffalo has not had a good defense this season, and they were getting pressure with 3 defensive linemen. Okay, on the last play of the game, the Hail Mary play, the Bills did what you always do on a Hail Mary play. You rush 3 and keep everybody back in coverage. They got pressure on Mahomes like that. That's just unacceptable for an offensive line. And I know there were some injuries. Trey Smith was banged up. Josh Simmons wasn't there. So you had Jawan Taylor was out for part of the game. So you had Wanya Morris and Jalen Moore playing as your tackles. And first of all, if I never see Wanya Morris play another snap for the Chiefs, I will die a happy man. And then I just don't understand the coaching decision to play Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Clyde Edwards-Helaire has not been good in years, and I just don't understand why you would ever give him snaps over Kareem Hunt. He is slower, weaker, doesn't have as good a vision. It makes no sense. So I don't really know what's going on with the Chiefs right now. I was feeling really good about that team coming into this week, but after the Bills game, you just look at it and thinking they don't have defensive line talent. Their offensive line cannot sustain injuries. The running back room, the decisions that are being made there make no sense. I mean, Patrick Mahomes, he got pressured on, I think it was 53% of his snaps. That is insane. Especially because, like I said, the Bills have not had a good defense. This has been one of the weaker Bills defenses in recent years. I can't talk. And they made the Chiefs look like scrubs. And it just makes it, I don't understand it. The pass rush it's pathetic. I mean, the Chiefs pass rush, this is one of the worst ones I've ever seen during the Mahomes era. I mean, the Bills' offensive line, they're good, but you see this against any competent offensive line they play. The opposing offensive lines will hold a pocket for 4 or 5 seconds against the Chiefs' defensive line. Because outside of Chris Jones, they've had nobody this year who's been able to make a difference. And even Chris Jones hasn't put up really any numbers because of, I think what happened to him was the same thing that happened to Kelsey, especially last year, but over the last 2 years. Because there were no other receiving threats, teams were able to play a much tighter coverage, commit more resources to covering Travis Kelsey. That same thing is happening to Chris Jones. There's nobody else who scares you on that defensive line, so teams are just able to full-on double him, and they don't have to pay for it anywhere else. So the fact that the Chiefs didn't trade for a defensive lineman, I haven't even heard that they tried to trade for a defensive lineman. And for what the Eagles traded to get Jalen Phillips, I would have liked to see the Chiefs try to trade for him. There was, there were different options. Quinion Mitchell, I think he went to the Quinion on the Jets. He went to the Cowboys. They traded a first-round pick. It was a few picks. That's something the Chiefs aren't going to give up. But the fact that they didn't even try to trade for a defensive lineman is insane to me. I mean, this is the best Chiefs offense in years. And it seems like they might waste it by not addressing any of their problems. And then the coverages, I mean, it's always tough to react to the Chiefs versus Bills regular season game because it always seems like the Chiefs come in with a very vanilla, very basic game plan against the Bills. because they know that they're going to face them in the postseason, so they want to save their best things for that point. And that's kind of been the story of the rivalry. The Chiefs averaged, I think, 14 points more in the playoffs when they play the Bills, 14 points per game more. So they clearly save stuff for the playoffs, but I just don't understand why you wouldn't try to win this game when you need the win for your record. Because this now makes the Broncos game after the bye week wildly important, because if they don't win that game, I think the division is probably out of reach for the Chiefs, because they just won't have the wins. The Broncos will at least split with them, so there will be no tiebreaker. And then the Chiefs are they would just be in a bad spot for the playoff race, because the Jaguars have the tiebreaker over them. Because the way I see it right now, if the Chiefs want to make the playoffs, they can probably only lose 2 more games over the rest of the season. Maybe 3. But if they lose 3 more games, they will be lucky to make the playoffs with 7 losses. Because the bottom half of the AFC is terrible, but there are enough teams that will have decent records that you would really like to not be a 10-7 team in the wild card. So yeah, I mean, Brett Veach, sometimes it feels like he's a genius, but I feel like he really overvalues draft picks. I mean, the fact of the matter is I don't think he's a good top of the drafter. That was a terrible way to say that, but what I mean is he's not good at drafting in the first few rounds. He's an excellent late round drafter. He finds all kinds of diamonds in the rough. But the problem is that when you try to build your whole team out of diamonds in the rough, eventually you actually need some top of the line talent. There's a good reason those guys didn't go in the first round. Because, I mean, Isaiah Pacheco is a perfect example. You found a guy in the 7th round who was able to be a pretty good starting running back for a couple of years. And it was a great story, because he didn't really have great talent. He doesn't have great vision, but he had the drive. He had the want to. The problem is, in the NFL, eventually you need to have talent on your team. And the first few rounds are where you're going to find talent. So if you want to look at who he's drafted in the first round over the past few years, I mean, you got this year, you had Josh Simmons, and he looked great for the time he's been playing. He was an excellent protector for Mahomes. Mahomes really trusts him. The problem is that I don't give Brett Veach a ton of credit for that pick, because everybody saw his talent, and everybody who analyzes draft prospects, every GM had pretty much agreed this guy might be a top 5 talent in this draft, but the injury history just made him a bit of a risk. So I'm not going to give you much credit for drafting a top 5 talent at 32. That is just, you got lucky that he got hurt. 2024. Last year, Xavier Worthy. Xavier Worthy was the first round pick. Again, he's been a good player so far. But again, the problem is, I don't know how much credit I really want to give him. Xavier Worthy was a great college player, and then he ran the 4.21. That's an easy, obvious pick. It's where he actually has to it's where Veach actually has to make hard decisions in the first round that I don't love what I see. I mean, first round pick in 23 was Felix Anudike-Uzomah. I mean, you want him to be good, but so far he has not been good. He's not been worth a first round pick so far in his career. And I would be surprised if he gets any kind of substantial second contract. George Karlaftis in 2022. Again, he's been a really good player for the Chiefs. He hasn't done a lot this year in terms of putting up numbers, but really none of the defensive linemen have. But yeah, I mean, he was a pretty good player, which is what you can basically hope for out of the draft. But you would really like at some point to get an elite talent in the first round. You've got 2022. This was the last, I think, really good first round pick Brett Veach had, was Trent McDuffie. He obviously was elite. He came into the league and was basically immediately a top 3 corner. That's amazing. 2020 was egregious. You have Clyde Edwards-Helaire over Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor is who the dummy GMs would have taken. All right, just to be straight up, Jonathan Taylor, I think at that point had he scored some of the most touchdowns in college football history. And sir, he scored more than anybody else. He was a great college running back. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I mean, he did not live up to his prospect type, in all fairness to the Chiefs. And Jonathan Taylor has had his injuries history, but I think a lot of that was because the Colts have been a terrible organization. So running backs on terrible teams just tend to get hurt. When you have a bad offensive line and you're taking hits behind the line of scrimmage, bad running backs on bad teams, elite running backs on bad teams, they just tend to get hurt. I mean, you can see Saquon Barkley on the Giants. He was getting hurt every year. He gets on the Eagles with the best offensive line in football, and this year just a very good offensive line. He's been very durable, even if he hasn't been as good this year as he was last year. But Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he's not lived up to what his draft hype was. But it was also just a case of Brett Veach outsmarting himself. He tried to pick the guy who might be more useful for gadget plays. Seemed like he was a little bit more cerebral, instead of just picking the guy with all the measurables. And I mean, that's a draft strategy that can work for quarterbacks. For quarterbacks, you want a guy who's intelligent, who can get through his progressions, who can actually play the position. You'll take that over measurables. I mean, look at Anthony Richardson. He's the man. He's a monster, right? He's huge. He's as strong as a defensive lineman. He can throw the ball over a mountain. He can run as fast as a wide receiver. Can't play the position. He just doesn't have the mind for it. When you're dealing with running backs, that's not as big of a deal. You just want somebody who's an athlete. You want the guy who's the strongest and the fastest you can get, and that's what Jonathan Taylor would have been. I mean, you just look at it, and it's like you go back. That's basically the first round picks of Brett Veach's tenure. It's not really excellent, and he has been picking from bad spots. You know, they're usually picking from late first round. But you would just like, you want to see at some point more than one. If you've got 5 first round picks, you got to have more than one elite talent. Now, we'll see what Xavier Worthy ends up being. So far, he's on track. So far in his career, he's a very good number 2 receiver. He's not a guy you can force feed the ball to like Rashee Rice is, and where he can run an offense. You can't really run an offense through Worthy. He's a great piece. He's a great number 2, but he's not a number 1 guy. I mean, Rashee Rice, that's what I'm talking about when I say that Brett Veach is a very good mid to late round drafter. I mean, Rashee Rice is awesome. He is probably one of the 10 best receivers in the NFL. But if I recall, I think he was a 3rd round pick. He was either a 2nd or 3rd. So if Brett Veach could figure out a system to draft to be as good in the first round as he is in the middle and late round draft picks, the Chiefs would be in business. But right now, it just doesn't feel like they're good at acquiring talent. Every season, it feels like it comes down to, in the playoffs, well, it's just going to have to be the Mahomes and Reed show. Because eventually you get there, and it feels like the Chiefs are just always at a talent deficiency compared to the other contenders. So I don't understand the coaching staff. And again, it's like, sometimes I wish they didn't win as much as they do, because then I could feel more justified in feeling upset at them. Because when you got this group of guys that just wins all the time, all they do is win, it puts a hard cap on how upset you can actually be with their process. But sometimes it just doesn't make any sense. And the coaching staff, I mean, I love Andy Reid. I love him so much, but I don't know if he still has the magic he once did. The play calling just feels more stale than it has in recent years, even though he's got more weapons. Some of the rushing stuff he's done with Rashee Rice has been really excellent. But the plays where I look at it and say, that's classic genius Andy Reid, feel fewer and farther between every year. And I don't know if some of that's Matt Nagy. The coaching staff at KC seems to love him. I don't really understand why, but you just look at some of the series they had in that Buffalo game. Like, if you have first and goal at the 1 and you walk away with 7 points, I don't care if you have the Raiders offense. That is a coaching issue. That's a play calling issue if you can't get 1 yard for a touchdown. Especially when you have a guy like Kareem Hunt, who's been one of the most efficient short yardage backs in the NFL. On 3rd and 4th and 1 so far this season, Kareem Hunt, you got to understand, Kareem Hunt is better than the tush push. All right, he's better than the early bird on 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1 combined. He's insane. And you have that guy, and you can't manage to pick up a yard in 3 downs. You walk away from first and goal at the 1 with three points. That is just straight up a coaching issue. There's no two ways about it. Now, I don't want to be all doom and gloom about the Chiefs. They still have played some excellent football this year. They were down a couple of offensive linemen against the Bills. So there are things that should get better. I don't expect the defense to be nearly as bad as it was. Leaving 2 tight ends open for massive bombs is just egregious, and that's not something that typically happens with Spagnuolo's defense. I mean, you could even see on one of the plays, one of the Chiefs linebackers, I think it was Drew Tranquil, he tripped over his own feet and fell down while covering, I think it was Dalton Kincaid on the first bomb. That's not something that usually happens with the Spags defense. I don't anticipate them being as bad as they were in that game again. So it's not all doom and gloom. Like I said, I mean, they're always at a talent discrepancy, so this year might not be much different. So still, the road still will go through them even as a wild card. The Chiefs, they've already shown they can win on the road in the playoffs. I mean, they won a Super Bowl the last time they had to go on the road. So, as long as they get to the playoffs, you still really do not want to play against them. And I mean, just a perfect example: if they make it if they make the playoffs, and their first round matchup is against the Colts as the 1 seed, well, I guess it would be if the Colts end up as the 2 seed, and the Chiefs' first round match would be against the Colts. What is anyone picking the Colts? I mean, some people will, but almost everyone who watches football, who talks football, is going to take the Chiefs because that's just what they are, a playoff team. That's a team, they're built for the playoffs every year. Every year it feels like the regular season is just a precursor to the playoffs. So it's not panic time, but it is time for some concern because they still have a lot of tough games coming up, and they really can't afford to lose very many games. Now, the schedule should open up. The Chargers, down both of their tackles, are not likely going to be a serious threat in the AFC anymore. The Broncos, I still don't know what I think about the Broncos. They win, but they win and look terrible. I mean, the defense looks great, but whenever they play another good defense, it feels like they're not doing, it doesn't feel like they do well. I mean, you've seen games like this week, they won 18-15 against the Texans. The Texans have a great team, but they're still not usually holding people to that low, especially not a team. The strength of the Texans is their pass rush, and the Broncos have one of the best offensive lines in football, so I don't understand why you're only scoring 18 points, especially when your defense holds the other team to 15. That means you've got the ball a lot. But, of course, they just kept going 3 and out, so I think the time of possession was pretty even. So the Broncos, I'm still not really buying them as a legitimate playoff contender. I think Bo Nix can be had if the opposing pass rush is able to get to him. Now, I mean, that goes for almost every quarterback, but I just don't know how well he's going to be able to deal with playing against several playoff-level defenses. We saw what happened last year against the Bills in the playoffs. They just got embarrassed. Yeah, so that's kind of the Chiefs' playoff aspirations. it's time for it is mild concern time in KC. It's not yet panic time. If they lose against the Broncos, then it's like DEFCON 2. It's definitely panic, but if they lose to the Broncos, but it's not time to think that they're done. Okay. So now that we're done with moving on from the Chiefs, I want to talk about the other team I mentioned earlier, the Colts and Daniel Jones. It seemed like in the last game, Daniel Jones came back to earth a little bit. He still threw for about 400 yards, but 3 turnovers. That's just egregious. So, I don't know. The Steelers' defense finally played up to what they should be playing at with how much money they cost, how much experience is on that team. So that's part of it. That's part of the story for sure. But I think the biggest story is that Daniel Jones can still become Daniel Jones when the defense is kind of applying pass rush, getting past, putting any kind of pressure on him, being able to get past that monstrous Colts offensive line, especially if you're able to bottle up Jonathan Taylor. So the Colts, man, they've got a great roster. They're a really well-constructed team. I think their new owner, I think she's fast climbing up my list where I think by the end of the year she might be the consensus best owner in the NFL. I mean, she seems like she is really trying to learn the game, and she's willing to make big moves. We'll see how some of those pay off with trading for Sauce Gardner. So they are set up. They're set up for success going forward, especially if they end up being good enough to where those first round picks wouldn't have been great picks. Because obviously, not having picks is a problem, but it depends on the organization. I mean, the Rams, you look at them. They never have good draft picks, and somehow they always find elite young talent walking in the door. So with a new regime in Indianapolis, they should be really happy looking forward, even if Daniel Jones starts to come back to earth. I don't think he'll be as bad as he was on the Giants, but if he starts playing like the 15th best quarterback in football instead of the third, right, that's going to be a big hit for that team. So I'm not still buying them as a Super Bowl favorite right now. I think if they finish first in the AFC, they have the bye week. I think they can definitely win a playoff game to make the championship round. But I don't think they can beat the Bills or the Chiefs, even as much as, I should stipulate the Chiefs in the playoffs. I don't think they can beat them, or at least I don't think they will, because I'm just too afraid of Daniel Jones turning back into Daniel Jones. But also, I mean, it's great roster, great owner. The future is bright in Indianapolis. Especially, they've got the most important thing in football outside of a franchise quarterback, which is a rock-solid offensive line. So, I mean, like we were seeing this year, you can put Daniel Jones pat behind a rock-solid offensive line, and he looks great. All right, so now moving on for the Colts, I want to talk about Sam Darnold and the Seahawks. So, Sam Darnold this year has, I think, answered a lot of questions about last year. Obviously, there's still the playoff questions, but I think at this point there's no question that if you put talent around him, this guy can be one of the premier quarterbacks in the NFL. I mean, the numbers he's put up are just crazy. He's been efficient. He hasn't really been turning the ball over. Jackson Smith and Jigba is obviously having a great year, but part of that is that there's Sam Darnold. So with the Seahawks, I mean, they look like real NFC contenders. They look like they could legitimately make the Super Bowl if Sam Darnold can continue this level of play in the playoffs. And what's so interesting about him is that based off of these last 2 seasons, you really want to be looking at him and asking, like, is he a top 10 quarterback? Is he a top 7 quarterback in the NFL? I mean, you're just listing it off. You know, it's the only reason those aren't easy yeses is because he hasn't had playoff success. He's kind of crumbled under the last 2 games that were basically playoff game adjacent in the NFC last year when he lost to the Lions in Week 17, played terribly, and then played terribly in the playoff game to get knocked out in the first round. But if he can make a real playoff push and be good, even if they lose in the NFC Championship, but Sam Darnold plays well in all 3 games, I'm assuming they're not going to be the 1 seed, then I think going into next year, you have to really consider that this guy might be like the 7th best quarterback in football. So you just try to list them off, you're thinking like, you got Mahomes, Allen, Lamar, Stafford, and that's 4. Those are the guys who are like clearly better. If you want to go off of pedigree, than Joe Burrow, or go off of history, which is fair. So then you've got 5. And then you're looking at it, you're thinking, well, who's next? Because like at this point, I don't know if I'd rather have Jordan Love than Sam Darnold. I mean, you've got Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels has had as many good years as Sam Darnold has. All right, Jaden Daniels, he's shown he's a good playoff quarterback, which does count for something. But he's also shown so far a lot of the concerns about him in the draft were right. He has not shown that he can stay healthy. His body just doesn't look like he can take big hits. So, if I'm thinking about it, if you want to put Jaden Daniels at 6, that's 6 quarterbacks who you would say are better than Sam Darnold. I'm looking through, I'm thinking, do I like Jordan Love better than Sam Darnold? Not really. Again, Sam Darnold has had more elite years than Jordan Love has. You've got Dak Prescott. Do I like Dak Prescott better than Sam Darnold? I mean, Dak's had a lot more regular seasons, but he's also shown that he can be at least as much of a choke artist as Sam Darnold. And he's done it with much better rosters than Sam Darnold has had throughout his career. So at this point, I'm thinking that's kind of a wash. And you can see in the last couple of weeks, Dak has kind of crumbled, even when his whole team is built around the pass. Sam Darnold has continued just slinging it. He's been awesome. I forgot about Baker Mayfield. I knew I was forgetting somebody. I mean, Baker's a better version of Sam Darnold. Both of them not the biggest, strongest, not the most athletic guys, but I mean they're just gritty, tough. I think Baker Mayfield is just a better version of Sam Darnold. Just has more arm talent. I think he's a little bit more clutch. A lot more clutch. He's a proven playoff player. So you've got the list of guys that I read off. I read off 8 names, and that's if you want to include Jaden Daniels. I think I listed 7 guys, 7 or 8 guys that, including Jaden Daniels, that you would say are definitively better than Sam Darnold, and a lot of that is because he just hasn't had playoff success. So if he goes on a deep playoff run with the Seahawks this year, I think we really have to start entertaining the possibility that he is a clear top 10 quarterback and maybe better than that. Now, I want to talk about the Lions. So the Lions are a tough team to evaluate this year. They've had some great wins. They crushed the Bears, but it's just been such a weird year in the NFL. You still look at so many teams and you don't know whether they're good or not. The Lions have crushed teams, and then they've lost to teams you really wouldn't want to lose to. I mean, they got beaten by J.J. McCarthy and the Vikings. All right, J.J. McCarthy, who the Vikings were de facto benching behind Carson Wentz with his arm falling off. I mean, the whole Carson Wentz's shoulder was destroyed, and the Vikings were looking at him like, rather play him than JJ. And JJ came in and just diced up Detroit. So I don't know if that says more about JJ McCarthy or the Lions, but I definitely think it says more about the Lions. They just seem like it's a very front-runner-ish team. I mean, the team, they are monsters when they can get ahead and when they can control the game on the ground. Because nobody in the NFL has as good of a running back duo as the Lions. But when they can't lean on the run, when it turns into a drop back game, anything remotely close to a shootout, you very quickly start to see Jared Goff's limitations. And that was what happened when they played against the Chiefs and just got crushed. And then against the Vikings, it was just like they just couldn't punch it in to really get the lead and maintain it. So at this point, I don't know whether the Lions are going to be able to make a deep playoff push. But again, I mean, I don't know who's in the NFC that's going to be much better than them. I mean, even after what I think is a terrible loss to Minnesota, I think if you have the Lions versus the Seahawks, it's still at least a 50-50 game. If you have the Lions versus the Eagles, again, I think that's pretty close to a coin flip. So just looking at this team, I think that they can play against and they can beat any team in the NFC. But I don't know if I would pick them to beat any team in the NFC, any of the contenders. So I would say, if you got Lions stock, hold it. Hold that Lions stock unless you think you see something that I don't see, because I don't see this team dominating anybody with a pulse. I mean, they crushed the Bears, but that was when the Bears everybody was looking at them thinking, is Ben Johnson a complete bust of a head coach? Yeah, speaking of the Bears, I want to talk about they played against the Bengals. And so basically what is up with Caleb Williams? What should we make of Caleb Williams? Because coming into the league, I was one of those people, I watched him at USC, I thought he was going to be awesome. I loved the outside the pocket stuff he was able to do. I thought it was a little concerning that he didn't do a lot of procedural stuff, but I kind of just waved that off. I thought, that's the easier stuff to learn in the NFL, especially if you get a good offensive-minded head coach. So far, he's not shown a consistent ability to be good at the procedural stuff. He misses checkdowns. He misses easy layups. He causes delay of game penalties. I think the Bears are one of the most penalized teams for delay of game in the NFL, or having to take timeouts to avoid delay of games. But at the same time, he is the best quarterback the Bears have had in maybe 20 years. I mean, last season, when everybody looked at him and said, oh, this guy's a disaster, he had one of the best Bears quarterbacking seasons of all time. So sometimes I feel like with him, the production doesn't match the eye test, which is strange, because usually when a guy is putting up numbers the way he does with his play style, you watch him and think, this guy is really good. But whenever I watch him, I just think he scrambles too easily. He'll leave. He doesn't like to play inside the pocket if it starts to close at all. He runs too far backward. But then he'll have these games like against the Bengals when it all just seems to work out, and you can see him being an athlete out there, and it's great. Now, of course, it is against the Bengals. The Bengals this year, they're a high school defense. I'm sorry. The fact that they allowed Colston Loveland to score a touchdown on that final play is absurd. I mean, there was a frame you could have taken during that play when there were two Bengals defenders who had sandwiched Colston Loveland, and he broke both tackles and ran in for a touchdown. And nobody was running after him. I mean, that team had quit. Their defensive backs got cooked by this tight end. Nobody was running after him. Nobody could catch up. So you can't take too much from a game against the Bengals because, like I said, they're horrendous. It's a high school defense. There's just no two ways about it. Their scheme is bad. They don't have talent. They don't try. It is one of the worst defenses of all time. Or maybe not of all time, but that I've ever seen. And then you look at Caleb's stats this year, they're decidedly mid. I mean, 19th in the league in QBR, he's 55.2 QBR. That is, a 50 is theoretically average. So he's just above average so far in his career. And you'd really like to see something better than that out of a guy with his pedigree, a Heisman winner, with an offensive-minded head coach like Ben Johnson. And they did a good job surrounding him with talent this year. The defense isn't great, but they really improved the offensive line, getting Joe Thuney from the Chiefs. DeAndre Swift looks like a whole new player. From last season, I thought DeAndre Swift was cooked. I thought he was terrible. This season, he's proved me wrong. He has responded in a big way. He's been averaging, I think, over 4 yards a carry. And it's just not... Rome Odunze has been amazing. But with Caleb, it just doesn't seem like it's ever all the way there. I mean, you can see in this game against the Bengals, the Bears scored 47 points. He had less than 300 passing yards. He had 280 passing yards. He completed less than 60% of his passes, 58.8. I mean, against that Bengals, I need to see bigger numbers than that. I mean, his passer rating was good, 114. But when your team, the 3 touchdowns are doing a lot of heavy lifting there. The thing that he can hang his hat on is that, especially for a young quarterback, he's been excellent at ball security. He doesn't really throw interceptions, but sometimes it feels like he is taking bad sacks because he's not willing to throw the ball away or throw it somewhere where it could potentially be picked off, which could be a good trait or a bad trait, but it depends on how much you get sacked. He gets sacked a lot. He's gotten sacked a lot less this year. But again, a lot of it, he creates his own sacks. He tries to roll out of the pocket. I think sometimes he still forgets that this isn't college. He's not the best athlete on the field anymore. You just can't outrun NFL defensive ends the way you can college ones. I don't think he's quite made the transition to high-level NFL quarterbacking. But again, I mean, he's on the Bears. So maybe he'll leave the Bears in 5 years and go have an absolutely explosive season somewhere else. Because even though they've put the talent around him, they've got Ben Johnson, who I think is a very good coach. With organizations that are just awful, sometimes the rot is just too deep to fix by retooling the employees, by retooling the locker room. I don't know what to... I think he's still going to be a good quarterback. You still see the flashes where you think that's the number 1 pick I thought I was going to get. But at this point, it's in his second year, halfway through his second year, I really would like to see more than just flashes. But it's definitely not panic time. Like I said, he's probably been the best quarterback the Bears have had in the last 20 years, at least. And there are a lot of guys who don't really have their coming out party until their 3rd or 4th year. So Caleb, I still lean on he's going to be good. I don't think he'll ever be in the conversation for the best quarterback in the NFL, like a lot of people did when he was getting drafted. But I think some of the concern about him is a little bit overblown. Just when you look at the numbers, he's not worse than an average. He's an above average quarterback by the numbers. Sometimes it looks ugly, but when you're the Bears, if you have an average quarterback, you just got to be happy with it. I mean, if you're the Bears right now, you have a winning record. You're 5-3. You have an above average quarterback. You have excellent weapons. If you're a Bears fan, you got to be happy with where the team's at right now, because this is a better situation than you've had in any recent years. Better situation than you've had since I've been watching football ever. So now, I want to go ahead and we talked a little bit about defense. So I want to talk about the best defensive player in the NFL, Myles Garrett, and the Browns. There was a little snapshot of a video, or it was a clip, of Myles Garrett on the sideline. He was really frustrated. He took off his helmet, threw it on the ground. And when I saw that, it made me think that he originally did not want to stay with the Browns. But then they offered him $160 million on the contract, and he signed it and decided to stay. So he doesn't seem happy with his decision. And there's a lot you can say. I mean, you're never happy when you're losing, no matter how much you're being compensated. But you got to look at him and you got to wonder, would he trade a smaller contract to be on a team that could win games? because when you sack a team, when you get 5 sacks in a game, that's some of the most sacks in NFL history for one game. I don't think that's quite the record, but it's close. And at the end of that game, you're spiking your helmet on the ground. You're not happy at all. You got to wonder, would he trade that contract for a smaller one to be on a team that could be a playoff contender? And it might not have even been much of a sacrifice money-wise. I mean, Aiden Hutchinson just got a bigger contract. I think Myles Garrett is better than Aiden Hutchinson. Not by a lot, but I think he is better. So I just think there's an interesting big picture thing to take away from Myles Garrett, which is, you know, for superstar athletes, eventually, how much money can you have before it's a diminishing returns type deal? All right, after you've already had a mega contract, would you take a huge contract to stay on a bad team? I think a lot of us just say, yeah, I'd take the money, but that's because we don't have the kind of mega contract. So if you're a player like Myles Garrett, where you're going to be a Hall of Famer, at what point does being able to be on a team that wins matter to you? Because you've got more money than you could ever spend in a lifetime. So at what point is it going to be worth it for you to lock up your first ballot Hall of Famer status? You know, build a legacy of being on a winning team, being happy during the regular season because you're not getting your teeth kicked in every week, and be able to go down as like one of the all-time greats. Like, when is it worth taking $140 million instead of $160 million so that you could potentially be considered like one of the 3 best players ever at your position? I don't know. But I think that's an interesting question to ask, an interesting takeaway from seeing how Myles Garrett's attitude has been this season. He doesn't seem like a guy who's getting paid $160 million. He just seems like a guy who's on a terrible team and doesn't feel like there's anything he can do about it. So you got to wonder if he's ever going to try to be traded. That contract is going to be hard to trade, but he's so good that I think there are teams that would do it. And honestly, it would probably be better for the Browns to trade him. I mean, Quinion, what was it? Was it Quinion Mitchell on the Jets? Let me look this up real quick. He went for, I mean, it was crazy. He went for a few first round. He went for a first round pick, I think a second round pick. Yeah, Quinnen Williams. It was Quinnen Williams. Let's see what he went for. But okay, so it looks like he was traded. Okay, so a second round pick, and a first round pick, and then Mozzie Smith. All right, if that's what Quinnen Williams goes for, then what do you think Myles Garrett would go for? 2 first and a second, at least. You're not getting out of there for less than kind of a 3 first round pick value, even with the contract. He is just such a game breaker. So you got to wonder how much longer he will be with the Browns. And maybe at this point a split would be better for all parties involved. So I just think it's just the eternal question of how much money is enough. Eventually, how much money do you sacrifice your happiness for before it's time to try to go win? All right. Well, that's going to do it for the first episode of Riptide. Hope you all enjoyed the show. Like I said, if you want to watch this again, like and subscribe. If you disagree with me, please leave a comment and tell me why I'm wrong. I'd love to read it. Signing off for now.